Lord Latimer's Ladies by Margaret Elin Schmidt and Dan McLaughlin. Read by Dan McLaughlin. Chapter 24. The Ladies Learn About Carl. The doors to the music room flew open, and the intimate moment was lost. "Aha! I knew that they would be here," said Eliza, "and it seems she has forgiven him," said Lenora, as Brian and Iris paused in their embrace. "I knew she would," said Eliza. "Ah, ladies," said Brian as he rose from the sofa, "it seems that our attempt to send my sister and me back to the future hasn't worked." "Clearly," said Lenora. No," said Brian, as Iris discreetly preened, making minute adjustments to her apparel as Brian wavered. "But if you are still here, where is Lady Alice?" asked Eliza. "Brian, sit," urged Iris as Brian swayed. He obediently sat and accepted Iris's direction without any resistance. The other two ladies exchanged knowing glances as they noted her air of familiarity, clearly an extension of the intimacies they had observed. The servant arrived, bearing a tray loaded with a pitcher of water and several glasses. It seemed completely natural that Iris took command of the situation. She gave Brian a glass of water, which he drank in quick gulps as he sat and tried to marshal his thoughts. "Thank you," Brian said. He turned his head to better address all the ladies. "Alice is out solving mysteries." He realized that he might sound somewhat obscure. "She discovered the most remarkable thing about this house." He paused, trying to juggle his conflicting and confusing thoughts to put them in a coherent order. "The important thing is that she is still out trying to track down another way to get us home and save your life," said Iris. "Okay," said Brian. "Yes, that is important, but I wanted to explain why Alice and I are still here." The ladies frowned, as it was clear, even by his standards, that Brian was struggling. He was aware that he might not be able to express himself as clearly as he would like through the diabetic fog and the way his emotions for Iris were overwhelming him. But nonetheless, he was trying to be precise. "Last night, we thought all we needed to do is get someone to agree to marry me," said Brian. He rose and began to pace, a bit unsteadily. We really believed it would work, but in the light of day, the idea seems to have had a few flaws in it. I'm afraid both Alice and I are still trapped here in your time. It wasn't on purpose. I mean, we didn't come here on purpose, but we didn't leave here. Did not leave here. He fumbled for words. Forgive me, Lord Latimer, said Eliza, a frown creasing her brow, but you don't look well. Please, will you take your seat? She gestured to one of the more comfortable looking chairs. Brian ignored propriety and sank down on the sofa next to Iris, who handed him another drink of water. We need to hold another council as we decide what to do, Iris said. I'm afraid Lord Latimer is not well at all. Shouldn't we wait until Miss Alice joins us? Asked Eliza. Later, said Brian, rallying from the sofa. She'll be here later. She has gone into the village. Plan A didn't work, and this morning we found out a new source of clues to the puzzle might actually be in the village. He gave a slightly malicious look at the servant, whose only purpose was to carry the water and glasses to the room. The poor guy hadn't done anything wrong, but Brian was still mad at Reginald for his late revelation about the professor, and he had to vent his frustrations at somebody. It was clear the servant, who had no idea why his lordship was glaring at him, let alone what the gentlefolk were talking about, and he was consequently very nervous. So Lady Alice has gone to the village because Eliza was clearly trying to catch up, because Nancy Drew needs to have all the facts to solve the mystery, Brian muttered. Is it Demon Theater again? Whispered Eliza to Lenora. Surely we would have heard if another lady had arrived at the castle overnight. Perhaps we should have ascribed all his mad utterances to the diabetic condition, mused the widow. Some more water, I think, said Iris firmly, and the aforementioned servant, eager to have something to do, quickly refilled Brian's glass. Leave the pitcher with me, and I will keep his lordship supplied, she directed, and eager to have someone making sense, the servant was glad to leave the water and the room, sunk in his fog of rising blood sugar. Brian was oblivious to the interplay. He took a deep drink of water and sought to resume his tale. The next bit was something that Alice noted. Really clever, said Brian. She figured out that the house has begun to try and talk to us. The castle made a creaky, settling noise, possibly intended by way of introduction. But while the ladies must have heard the house noises, they did not seem inclined to ascribe any meaning to them. "I beg your pardon," said Iris, puzzled but wanting to believe. "You wish us to understand that the house talks?" She poured another glass of water and drank this one herself. "But that's impossible," Eliza protested. "Well, no, not in the blah blah, hello, I'm the house, pleased to meet you sort of way," Brian said. "That would be silly. He's a house. I mean, all those creaks and groans that the house does, all those billowing curtains, he's trying to speak to us in those." "Brian, dear, it's a house by the ocean," Iris said sympathetically. "Drink some more water." "No, it's true." Alice explained that all the creaks and bangs and such actually mean something. He looked from one lady's face to another. Iris focused on the water pitcher. Eliza looked confused, and Lenora just stared at him. Somewhere near, a shutter banged. Brian chose to take it as a sign of moral support. "Yes, exactly," he crowed. "Exactly. Thank you, Carl." Brian had never been so happy to hear a shutter bang in his life. "Yes, that's it. You see? That's the code. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for maybe or try again," he said quickly. The ladies looked at him, then shared a glance between themselves. It was clear that their earlier doubt about his sanity were coming back twice as strong. For one horrible moment, Brian thought of all the movies where only one person knew what was going on, like in a murder mystery. In one scene, there is a dead body, but when the horrified witness brings everyone back to the crime scene, the body was gone, and everyone looked at the first person as if they were crazy. Crazy, much like the ladies were looking at him. He turned to Iris and saw the shock and dismay when she finally met his gaze. I'm not crazy. Time travel and talking houses. It all fits together. Don't you see?" Iris set down her glass of water with delicate precision, and after a pause, said, "Not really." She rose carefully from the sofa. At the window of the music room, a shutter banged. The noise was like a gunshot, and the ladies froze. "Yes, that's it!" Brian cried. "Yes, the Carl, the house. One bang, yes. Good boy, Carl." The shutter banged again. "Carl, do the billowy thing," Brian urged. The curtains obligingly bellowed, and as one, all the ladies shied away from the windows into the center of the room. "I think," said Lady Iris, "I am going to sit down now." She looked weak-kneed, but did not move, because that would mean going closer to the curtains, billowing of their own accord. Brian reached out, took her hand again, and gently drew her down to sit beside him on the sofa. "So you call the castle Carl," observed Eliza, electing to notice the lesser of the two revelations after a moment of furious thinking. "Well, I wanted to call him Hank," Brian said. "Of course you did," muttered Lady Iris. "But Lady Alice decided on Carl?" guessed Lenora. Somewhere a shutter banged. The three ladies jumped and laughed a little shakily. It seemed the easiest thing to do at this point. "Yes," said Brian. "And he can hear all of us?" asked Eliza. Again, a shutter banged. "That's it exactly." Brian was practically bouncing on the sofa with joy. He definitely was clapping his hands together. Unfortunately, he looked a tad like a mechanical monkey on a merry-go-round. But as sometimes happened in his blood sugar highs, the adrenaline of the movement gave him a temporary relief from the fog. He looked silly, but the ladies were too busy struggling with other, more serious blows to their worldview to focus on their host. "Yes, yes," said Brian. "Carl is the house that talks, and hopefully once Alice comes back, we can figure all this out." Somewhere a shutter banged. "And the house wrote that awful poem?" said Iris, trying to make some sort of sense of it all. Somewhere a shutter banged 3 times in quick succession. "That's not as clear," replied Brian in his role as translator. Another 3 bangs, followed by a series of creaks, clangs, and billows, suggested that Carl had some strong opinions he wanted to express on the matter. Eliza managed to interject tactfully. "I rather liked it. Imagine a castle writing poetry." The castle immediately settled down and after a pause banged once, as if blown by the wind, but probably not. The irons by the fire clattered against the wall, and then the house became still. "So with the help of Carl," Brian concluded, "whatever Alice finds from this recently revealed old coot character in town, we hope to solve the mystery of Dartmoor Castle." Being himself, Brian rallied from his stupor, rose and posed dramatically one hand pointing to the ceiling. Wahaha, he added. The house creaked, and a small puff of ash billowed from the fireplace. The implication that their host might be full of hot air was so clear and so humorous that it reassured the ladies that whatever Carl's literary abilities might be, the house was not malevolently inclined. Instead of quivering with fear, they laughed. Eliza gave a small laugh. It seems we have substituted one sort of problem with another, she said after a pause. What do you mean by that? Said Iris, clearly at the end of her patience. Eliza made a small gesture toward Brian. At first, we had only to deal with a man who was burdened at times with a surplus of words. Her second gesture was more expansive, taking in the whole room. But now we have accumulated a new friend who is quite limited in the ways he can speak. However shall we communicate with him? End of chapter 24, Lord Latimer's Ladies, by Margaret Elan Schmidt and Dan McLaughlin. Read by Dan McLaughlin.